It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mainz and Dutts. I'm your host, Mainz, and my colleague who's just got me cancelled by Denny Carter is Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
As he is a man who has never been owned online, it's always good to be owned online by him.
Obviously. That's one of them, give us something that you get cancelled for on the internet, and mine, as people that regularly listen to the show, is that PPR is garbage and should be binned off immediately. Neil sent it to Denny, who didn't take it very well.
See, you only advocate this stance because you hate freedom.
I don't hate freedom. I hate 10 catches for 24 yards getting like 12 points. Because it's shit.
You disrespect the flag.
It's not my flag, so yeah, why not?
Why do you hate the troops, mate?
Because I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
I'm just a bad person. I don't know if you watched Liverpool versus Benfica. You probably didn't.
Nope.
But just before the game, the Liverpool players kneeled, and the Benfica players were completely bamboozled by it, and all eventually kneeled because I think they just thought, okay, I think we should do that, but they did it in some kind of like domino effect. So like one of them did it, and they all just did it in kinds of every night. Because they were like, why are they doing that? I don't know why they're doing that. Okay, we'll do that. And I thought it was quite full of solidarity, really.
Solidarity and synchronicity.
Exactly. But enough of English football. Let's go on with American football. Neil, it is mock draft SZN, as the kids would say. And because it's that, we have created our own mock draft, and me and Neil are going to give you today picks 1 to 16, almost like half, and then the second we will then do a different podcast where we'll do the second half of the draft.
Oh, spoilers!
What as I like to call it, the Chiefs and Packers section of the show. For both of us, we will talk draft needs. We will talk who we believe they will pick. I also talk through a little bit about who else they could pick, and we will argue it out to be open. And we're not draft experts, not college experts, but this is always fun, and I always like listening to literally hundreds of hours of podcasts over the past 2 months to make myself sound like an expert. My favourite one at the moment was today. Robert Mays did a show with Nate Tice, and congrats to both on athletic contracts. And they were talking about Sky Moore, and Robert, who's only just started watching because he does other stuff, said reminds me a lot of Golden Tate. And what he didn't realise is that everybody else has already had that opinion, and he literally wanted to cancel himself off his own show. Yeah,
Mays was literally the 25th, 100th person looking at tape to make this comparison.
It was amazing.
I'm not a tape watcher, I haven't seen it myself, but I've seen, read and heard that many people. As soon as he said it, I was like, is this a bit?
It wasn't a bit until Nate told him it was a bit.
It just felt like it was one of those. He was about to tell us that he'd watched this film and it was really good and people might enjoy it. It's called Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's just discovered it.
Exactly, amazing. Well, Neil,
they have been good shows actually. No disrespect. I say I like listening to the ones with Dane Brugel and Lance Zierlein.
Yes, Dane and Lance is quite interesting. I found Lance's one where everyone was going wild on how fast everyone run, and Lance rang someone up in Indianapolis and like, have you changed the turf? And they were like, yeah, we have. It's well quicker, isn't it? And he's like, did you tell anyone? They were like, no. He was like, well, that's why everyone's running faster.
No, I like them. I didn't realise as well until actually listening to a few of the pods this week. I didn't realise how much Nate Tice sounds like Frank Schwab, who writes for Yahoo. I don't know if they're from the same part of the world, but there's very similar quality of their voice.
I like the idea that Nate has about 17 different hats. So his dad is Mike Tice, obviously former NFL head coach. So he has coach's son. He is a former college quarterback at Wisconsin. where he was backup for Russell Wilson. He then became a scout / player personnel person at multiple stops, Las Vegas and Atlanta being two of them. Yeah, and now writes for the Athletics. Pretty cool. Like, basically covers all the bases. We're not those people, but we're going to give it a best shot.
But one thing, he's not verified on Twitter, and I am.
Yes, that's true, Neil. And this verified person is about to start his mock draft, so let's get on with it. Before we start, if you're a fan of the Bears, the Broncos, the Browns, the Dolphins, the Colts, the Raiders and the 49ers, don't be expecting to hear your team anytime soon, as you will not.
See you in May.
Bears is obviously Fields, Broncos is Wilson, Browns is Watson, Dolphins is Tyreek Hill, Colts is Carson Wentz, the Las Vegas Raiders is Devontae Adams, and the 49ers is backup quarterback Trey Lance. You will hear, if you are a fan of the New York Football Jets, the New York Football Giants, the Green Bay Packers, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions, your team mentioned more than once, as there's multiples all over the shizzle here. So we will get on straight away.
Do you know, though, just quickly, there are 5 teams already with multiple picks in the first round next year.
Yeah, and good quarterbacks in next year's draft as well.
Yeah. Fuck them picks, as Les Snead said.
Yeah, exactly. Well, some people don't agree, Howie Roseman being one of them. Let's start, Neil. Jacksonville Jaguars picking first again. Last season went so well for them. I have needs for them. A lot of places, but most definitely offensive tackle and defensive end. Neil, talk me through who you would pick if you were the Jacksonville Jaguars number one.
I would go with Aiden Hutchinson. I think this is one of those, they've got their quarterback, they hope, so that this is one of those years that they'd probably be screaming for a trade down, but I don't think anyone wants to trade up to the first pick for anyone. So I think a lot of people may have thought that offensive tackle might be the way they would go, but they have franchised Cam Robinson. That means nothing. They can revoke that any time, although if I was Cam Robinson, I'd sign it now and get it locked in. But I just think that defensively, I think Doug Peterson is going to want to try and scheme up an awful lot of offense and basically hope the defense improves. And a player like Aiden Hutchinson, who I don't think is Myles Garrett, I don't think he's Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa, but I think he's got the safest floor of these edge rushers, so I think he'll be the first pick.
Described as a football player, you know what I mean? He lives and breathes football. We will come on to someone later on who people query, because he's got a life, whether he will be an NFL player. I also pick Aiden Hutchinson, as we said, defensive end from Michigan. I think I have 2 defensive ends from Michigan in my draft this year, maybe, or I definitely talk about the other one as well. Neil mentioned defensive tackle. They could pick Ike Ekwonu, the offensive tackle from NC State here. They won't. I think it's Aiden Hutchinson. I think that makes Detroit Lions fans, or my friend Taib Abu, tremendously unhappy, because I think he wanted Aiden Hutchinson to keep that Michigan tradition going. But yeah, I think Aiden Hutchinson is right now nailed on number one, but we are 3 weeks away, so things can change.
Still 3 weeks.
Second pick is the Detroit Lions, aforementioned. Needs defensive end, quarterback, defensive back, and wide receiver. Bad year to be 2 and not have and be a quarterback. Neil, I'll go first this time. I've got them selecting Travon Walker. He's the defensive end from Georgia. He is zooming up draft boards quite unbelievably. It's one of those classic situations where at the end of the season he wasn't in a slight bit of gambling parlance here from Ben Solak. He wasn't in the top 25 to be picked odds in Caesar Sportsbook, and now he's favourite to be number 2. He hasn't played football in that period of time, so that's a cool story. He only had 7, I think he only had 6 sacks last year, which is a concern, but he's very traitsy. The only other pick I would suggest that they may go for is Do you pull a trigger on Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty? I don't think they do. I think it's far too early. I would understand why you would. It's a tough one for the Detroit Lions because, again, as we said, they need a quarterback and they picked the wrong year to be bad. And I expect them to be better next year. Not great, but I expect them to be better. And that may mean they won't get a quarterback. Although I do think they've got 2 picks next year as well. So maybe they can move up, but then they'll be in the queue with everybody else who's trying to move up, so it'll be tough. So yeah, they could pick Willis, but I'm going with Trayvon Walker, defensive end from Georgia.
When you say the Lions have picked the wrong year to be bad, you realise they've picked every year since 1999.
Yeah, but they've had a quarterback for a long period of time in that, and now they haven't got one, unless you think Jared Goff's a quarterback, and I do not.
Well, speaking of that quarterback, he attended Georgia, I believe, Matthew Stafford.
He did.
So I'm agreeing with you. I'm also having them taking Trayvon Walker. Yeah, maybe the production wasn't off the charts last year. He was playing for Georgia. No one needed to be mega producer because they just literally, okay, you've been out there for 2 minutes, it's someone else's turn now. It was literally like playing, 5-a-side, when there's 8 of you and you're kicking the crap out of someone, they just keep wheeling you in and off. So yeah, I would go with Walker myself. I would say they'd like Hutchinson to not be the pick. He's going to be. They could take another tackle, but they took Penei Sewell last year. And just listening to people like Zerline, Brugler, those people who they are adamant and vehement in their disagreement that the Lions would even contemplate taking a quarterback at 2 this year. So whether Willis gets drafted, we'll come to it obviously. If he was to go here, it would be a major shock.
Next, Neil, Houston Texans. I had them needy at quarterback, offensive line, defensive tackle and defensive end. I think that's unfair on all the other positions in the team because they are needy in them as well. But you can't say whole team. Well, it could.
You could. PFF does.
Yeah. Who have you got the Houston Texans picking?
Well, I think that we shouldn't take the fact for granted that Laramie Tunsil will be on this team in the long run. I think that maybe they could look to flip him, get him off the roster. But even if they keep him, they could bring someone in to play guard for a year until they can ship him off. So I have them taking Ike Ekwonu from NC State. I just think from the tackles that are left, I think a lot of people are saying that Ekwonu has a lot more upside than the Evan Neals or Charles Crosses of the world or Trevor Pennings. So I think that, as a developmental prospect, if you can get his feet wet at another position while he's still learning the game, and then you can ship him across, he's been battle tested, and then he'll be able to slide in rather than sticking him in at left tackle straight away and saying best of luck to you, in which case you ruin him and you ruin the quarterback who you're not wedded to, but I think you are prepared to give a chance to. So yeah, Ike Ekwonu.
Who is the GM for the Houston Texans, Neil?
God, isn't it?
Not God. It's, this is now Nick Caserio. It's not the God fella, although he's probably heavily involved.
Heavily involved.
Correct. See what he did there? Bravo. He comes from the New England Patriots, so I also believe they will take a tackle here, but I believe they will take Evan Neal, who actually has played guard. I don't think Ekwonu played much guard at college, but Neal did at Bama. The Bama connection is probably strong in this Houston Texans organisation if we go to the Patriots South kind of concept. So I too think they'll take tackle. They could take a defensive end here, maybe Kayvon Thibodeau, but I don't think they will. I think they take Evan Neal, offensive tackle, Alabama. And Neil, New York Football Jets, I'm first here. Needs our defensive end, defensive back and offensive tackle. I love this. I'll tell you why. Because we're going to vehemently disagree on this, and I'm going to use history and you're going to use logic, and that means that I'm right. The New York Jets will choose Sauce Gardner, cornerback, Cincinnati. You ask me why? Because that's a ridiculous thing to do. Why would you take a corner so high? Because they're the New York Jets and they have Darrelle Revis envy from now until eternity, and they continually look for that same person again, and in this attempt it will be Sauce Gardner. they could pick a tackle here and could take Ike Ekwonu, because I haven't picked him yet. You have, obviously. But I think the pull of getting Darrell Revis again is too strong.
The head coach of the New York Jets is Robert Saleh. He comes from the Seattle and the San Francisco coaching trees that believe on building from the defensive front backwards, so getting the pass rush. The GM for the New York Jets is Joe Douglas, who comes from Baltimore, Philadelphia and Chicago, who also believe in building from the defensive front backwards. They firmly subscribe to the view that it's called the defensive secondary for a reason. The Jets have not had a strong or dominant pass rusher since John Abraham.
Amazing.
So I think they use this pick to take a pass rusher, and they take Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon.
I love that. I also love the idea that the only time that those teams that you mentioned have been good is when they've had cornerbacks. But that's a completely different story, and I'm sure Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are much smarter than me. But yeah, I mean, yes, Kayvon Thibodeau, who has slipped down draft boards, when asked this week what was the craziest thing he'd heard about himself, Kayvon Thibodeau said that I'm not the best player in the draft, which I always like, that kind of bravado. So completely makes logical sense that you would pick him. Next, Neil, is the New York Football Giants. I have needs of O-line, defensive end, and quarterback question mark. Depends who you are. Who have you got the Giants taking?
This is the first spot where I think the QB needy teams may start, would think this is a team we need to have on speed dial, because they already have 2 picks in this first round. They are so talent needy across the board, and given the background of the front office coming from Buffalo, a bit smarter, some grown-ups in the room, they would probably love to maybe slide down, sacrifice one of the first round picks here for maybe a future pick or some later picks. So I think this is where it begins. The QB intrigue begins at this spot. I don't think they'll be tempted to take one themselves, because I think they're happy to run Daniel Jones into the ground and then move on.
Agreed.
So I think, again, this is a team that they've got some strength up front. They're not dominant by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this is the New York team that takes Sauce Gardner, cornerback Cincinnati.
Like it. I have, in that situation of 5 being the QB spot, this is and I text you this, the Saints offering 16 and 19 to get to 5, because they need to get ahead of the next team picking, the Carolina Panthers. We're not doing trades, it's bloody hard enough getting 32 names down. I think the Giants, in their need to at least attempt to help Daniel Jones be good, they draft an offensive lineman here. I've still got Ike Ekwonu, so I'm taking Ike Ekwonu from NC State. Could take Charles Cross from Mississippi State, but I'm going Ike Ekwonu here. So yeah, I'm with you absolutely. Though this is a team whose phone is going to ring, I believe, on draft night, because I think this is the place where you need to get to.
And I think the big difference, other than last year, this is now a team that if you do ring them about trading up with them, they will answer the phone, because Dave Gettleman is off playing with his abacus somewhere else. Correct.
Yeah, as you said, as far as we're aware, based on what we know, adults are now in the room, and they are a team that you can deal with. I've got the Carolina Panthers next. Needs quarterback, O-line, wide receiver and safety. This team stinks. I think you can put forward the case that the Houston Texans are in a better position right now than the Carolina Panthers.
I think you can argue that point, because I think the Texans at least know, whereas I think the Panthers are deluding themselves.
How do you fix a problem like everybody on the hot seat? You draft a quarterback and say, well, look, we're crap this year because we drafted a quarterback. Do I think, based on what everyone's saying, this is too high to draft a quarterback? Yes. But I think they do. I believe they will pick Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty. They could pick Kenny Pickett here, but I don't think they do. So I'm going to go with Malik Willis quarterback from Liberty. Neil?
I also have them taking Malik Willis. I though think, based on what you said, I think from what I have heard from it was Charles Robinson who reported it. He said he's spoken to people around the league, and he said the Saints have made the trade with the Eagles that they did because the Saints, like the Panthers, are deluding themselves and think they're contenders. So they want 2 blue chip players from this draft. They are not looking to do what the Eagles did back in the day, from going 13 to 8 to 2. They want the 2 picks for the 2 players. Charles' sources are usually good.
Yes,
but
agreed.
I think so. I don't think
sources being good and sources lying to you are not the same thing, though.
No, but I don't think. I will trust him. And as I say, we're not doing trades here, so I don't think they're trying to jump ahead of the Panthers. I think they can win with Jameis or Dalton, whichever you want. So I also have the Panthers taking Malik Willis, having a wasted season because your head coach is Matt Rule, your offensive coordinator is Ben McAdoo, you've got a terrible offensive line and only got DJ Moore, and you'll get Christian McCaffrey hurt again. So everyone will get fired, and then Willis has to learn a new system next year. But that's for next year to worry about.
And the worst thing about, if you don't think that situation matters in where quarterbacks are picked, A, I can't help you, and B, I feel sorry for Malik Willis because he is doomed to failure and be seen as a draft bust if he's not very, and it could be absolutely nothing to do with him. Next, Neil, New York Football Giants again. As we said, O-line, defensive end, quarterback question mark. Who have you got the Giants taking?
I've got them going what you said with their last pick. You went with tackle to help out Daniel Jones or his eventual replacement. I've got them taking the tackle here, and I've got them taking Evan Neal from Alabama. From what the podcast that I've listened to, the scuttlebutt is that assuming he returns from ankle surgery healthy, they still want Andrew Thomas to play left tackle. So again, this could be Evan Neal kicking over to right tackle unless called upon on the left side. So whether it might be a bit early to be taking a right tackle, even though I know that tackle's a tackle and there's the disparity that once existed is now no longer there. This is still a team that, as I say, is still entrenched in old school thinking, despite the fact that there are new thinkers in charge. But I do think, assuming they make these 2 picks, I'd be stunned if one of them wasn't a tackle, and I think they can wait to this one to take one.
Agreed. And Thomas was better last year, so they will hope he gets back fit and stands up and is not a turnstile. For the Giants, I've got them taking defensive end Kayvon Thibodeau here. I think it's a really good pick. I think you get a tremendously talented player who has been fairly or unfairly criticised since the season ends. For some of these players, the best thing that happens is the season ends. Trayvon Walker. For some others, it's the bad thing, and Kayvon Thibodeau's fallen into that thing because he seems to have a personality and seems to like things other than football, which obviously people hold against you. Okay, fair enough.
Bastard.
I still think you could take a tackle here, maybe Charles Cross, but you've already taken one, so why bother? So I'm going. You've took Aquano, you've took Thibodeau. That's probably as good as you're gonna get. So let's move on and let's go for it. 8. I've got the Atlanta Falcons. Got quarterback, wide receiver, defensive end, and safety. I'm gonna be honest with you. Watched a couple of games on Sky. Listened to Mina Kimes and listened to Ben Solak, two of my favourite people, and I've been bought into the Kyle Hamilton hype. They see him as one of the best players in the draft. It's not sexy, but the Atlanta Falcons are awful. So getting football players is a good thing. Getting someone on the defence who can do multiple things and help you be, competent is a good thing. So I've got them taking Kyle Hamilton, safety from Notre Dame. And I know Thomas Willoughby, if he listens to this, will be screaming, why am I not taking a wide receiver? You could take Drake London here, wide receiver, USC, but I'm not. I'm doing that best player available thing in my head and going Kyle Hamilton.
Last year, the Falcons took a chance on a unicorn at their position. Now, you'll find no more enthusiastic follower than the tight end position than me, but even I said at the time, if you're taking a tight end of 4, you're doing it wrong. Unicorn, couldn't give a shit. He's a tight end. Or in 5 years, you'll be claiming he's a tight end when he's doing the grievance to get paid as a wide receiver. He's a tight end, and it was not the right move then. But you thought he was a unicorn, we'll take him. So this year, I think the Falcons, again chasing unicorns, looking for a difference maker on the defensive side of the ball. They'll take the most athletic size, speed specimen on God's green earth for many a year and keep him in the great state of Georgia, and they'll take Jordan Davis.
Nice. Again, logical. There's questions on whether I was listening to something. There's questions on whether he can stay at 365 pounds or he'll get heavier. Oh my lord, I don't know. And he's never really had to pay more than 25 snaps. But it's cool. I've got the perfect team for Jordan Davis later on in the draft. But yeah, I can totally understand it. Neil, Seattle Seahawks. I've got quarterback, offensive line, and defensive end. Where do you see the Seattle Seahawks going? Now, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can do it like you think they should do it, or you can pick the 15th best defensive end on the board and just take him like Pete will.
Look, at the end of the day, those 4.5 sacks over 3 years won't get themselves. And as we've seen, the Seahawks, since Scott McCloughan left, their drafts have been iffy. I mean, the best players they've drafted. The best players they've drafted have been Tyler Lockett, late round pick, and DK Metcalf, who every team passed on, and they've been made to look a bit silly. Okay, so that's 2 players on the offensive side of the ball in 10 years. Okay, great. I think the fact that he blazed pretty bloody good athletic numbers at his pro day yesterday solidifies Derek Stingley Jr. as a top 10 pick. And I think he just about stays in the top 10 and he goes to Seattle, because we all know that once you've given away your franchise quarterback and replaced him with Drew Lock, and you're banking on a running back who's got a broken neck, who you can't quit, and one who did absolutely bugger all for 4 years until the final 6 weeks of the season, we all know the best way to kickfire that offense is take a cornerback, and that's what they'll do.
I'm not being Pete Carroll and John Snyder in this. So based on that, I've got the Seattle Seahawks taking Charles Cross, offensive tackle from Mississippi State. This will not happen because this is logical and it's an offensive tackle. I have this second choice of being Jermaine Johnson, who's a defensive end from Florida State. This is more logical. This is kind of Seattle-esque. But yeah, Seattle. For the love of God, now you've got rid of Russell Wilson. Let's protect Drew Lock, and get him Charles Cross.
Drew Lock can't protect himself, so I don't think any number of linemen can help him.
I don't want to tell secrets here, but the Seattle Seahawks have a chance to absolutely stink this year, like real bad.
You hate to see it.
I have nothing against it. I know you do.
But more than that, you love to see it.
The NFC is an absolute dumpster fire. Next, number 10, New York Football Jets, as we mentioned before. Defensive end, defensive back and offensive tackle. However, I'm not picking any of them. They need someone to help Zach Wilson, and I believe that person is Drake London. He is a big-bodied wide receiver who is excellent from USC. Just what Zach Wilson needs. They need to know pretty fast if Zach Wilson's the answer or a question. So getting him an additional wide receiver in the draft will be useful. So therefore Drake London. They could, again, I did Jermaine Johnson here as well for defensive end from Florida State. However, I'm taking Drake London. He's a wide receiver USC.
I think this is the start of, if there's going to be a wide receiver run, this is where it begins. So I think it's a question of how does your own preference fall with which wide receiver they'll take. Drake London is a big man who can play small, and I don't mean that he cowers. I mean the way they use him is almost like he's occasionally a bit of a gadgety player, while also playing like Mike Evans at his peak. I've also got the Jets taken at 10, but I could see them taking a Garrett Wilson or a Chris Olave. It depends on how their evaluation falls. But for the first wide receiver to go, I think there's an argument to be made that London would be the first to go. So he'll go here.
I think it's fair to assume that in the one of the two picks, 4 or 10, the Jets take a wide receiver. They're not taking one of 4. No. So I assume 10 will be a wide receiver, and then that will be London. I mean, again, if the Saints want to come up or someone else wants to come up, 10's a good way to go down. You drop down, you probably still get Wilson, Olave, or London in the teens. So you may see them do that. We'll see. Next, the Washington Commanders, still a NFL franchise, just clinging on by the skin of their teeth. Needs linebacker, defensive back or offensive tackle,
and quarterback.
And obviously, and quarterback. They've got loads of them, all garbage, but yeah, why not? Just before we'd go, Warren Sharp, I absolutely adore Warren Sharp. He needs to get that weaker schedule out of my face. I know this man makes a lot of money. I understand that, but he needs to get that. Start betting on the Washington Commanders thing out of my face immediately. I just don't need to see it. No, thank you. Not at all. This team was built allegedly on its defensive line, which last year, when it had all its best players, it was rubbish until 2 of his best players disappeared and then they were good again. However, since I've watched the NFL, well, not necessarily since the passing of Sean Taylor, this team has never been good in the secondary, ever. They will attempt to fix that by taking Derek Stingley Jr., defensive back from LSU, tremendously talented, had injuries in the last 2 years, and also the dumpster fire that's been LSU since they won the national title. But he'll know what dumpster fire is about. We will fit right in with the Washington Commanders. They could take Chris Olave here. That would be, fantasy analyst man's dream. And, although they don't have a quarterback, they could do with, supporting the one that they haven't got in Carson Wentz. God, I can't believe I just said that. I just threw up a little bit in my mouth. And take Chris Olave, who I've weirdly wrote Charles on here. But anyway, I think they go Derek Stingley Jr. 11.
I've seen written and some mocks that still have Washington taking quarterback here, maybe Kenny Pickett. Well, as we all know, Carson Wentz reacts very well to competition in the quarterback room.
Absolutely no way that would happen now.
Yeah, not going to happen because you've got to your scandal hit dumpster fire doesn't need big ginger tears all over it as well as he throws the toys out the pram for his third team. Such a likeable chap. I think, as you say, Washington defensively they improved last year once the big names went, so maybe the lesser talent actually listens to the coach. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Speculating now.
But again, this team needs playmakers, and you can argue that for all the criticism he gets, and he does get a lot, Carson Wentz hasn't really been able to string seasons together where he's had a plethora of receiving options. The best season he had, obviously, that season that's never happened again. He had Zach Ertz, he had Alshon Jeffrey, he had Torrey Smith, he had the solid running game. Well, Washington have got ground game options, in Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, or Fredo, as I believe they're calling him in Buffalo. There's Terry McLaurin, and then there's nothing else. Logan Thomas, we don't know how healthy he's going to be. Ricky Seals-Jones is now a Giant. Curtis Samuel, what are we getting from Samuel at this stage of the game? So I think this is another wide receiver. So I have been taking Garrett Wilson. Again, could be Olave, could be another one. But I just think that someone like Garrett Wilson is a good player to play alongside McLaurin until he leaves, because you don't pay him what he's worth.
12 Minnesota Vikings needs defensive back, defensive end and wide receiver. I jumped in and did the Commanders first because they're my team. So at 12 Minnesota Vikings, I have them picking defensive back Andrew Booth, Clemson. No change of head coach, but still, you need defenders, and I think Booth is someone they look to pick here to try and shore up that defensive backfield with secondary, which absolutely awful last year. Could take Jordan Davis here. I think everyone could take Jordan Davis around this position, but yeah, I've gone Andrew Booth, defensive back, Clemson.
Well, that's an interesting pick, and I can see why he would be your first choice to go to Minnesota here. It's a different regime. As I say, we know defensively they've been a nightmare for the last few years, made me look stupid in each of the last 2 seasons because I thought they'd be able to scheme up a defence. We don't really know where this front office is going to go because it's a bit of a hodgepodge from other organisations who've been analytically driven. The GM, I think, comes from the Browns, but I think he was influenced obviously by the Eagles. I think Minnesota are usually at their best when they have the pass rush going. So I have them taking an edge defender, and I have them taking George Karlaftis from Purdue.
Nice. Next team is the Houston Texans. Needs quarterback, offensive line, defensive tackle, defensive end. Neil, who have you got the Texans taking?
This ends the slide for me for Kyle Hamilton. Because as I say, this is now a situation where they can put him in as a difference maker. I don't like the idea of a positionless player. If you're a positionless player, that means you don't excel in any one area, and they're just going to try and aggregate you all over the place. But I think he can come in and he can just literally start from day one and just basically be the leader of that secondary.
I have the Houston Texans taking Jermaine Johnson, defensive end, Florida State. Need pass rush, and he is available for them here, so I get them taking that. I mean, as we said before, Houston Texans need everyone, so I don't think, as long as it's a talented player, I don't think it's someone that's going to be an issue for them. But yeah, there we go. Next is the Baltimore Ravens, and it's me. They need defensive end or defensive tackle. Neil, is there a more Baltimore Ravens pick than Jordan Davis, defensive tackle, Georgia? Could go Trent McDuffie, defensive back, Washington, but I've got them going Jordan Davis, and he couldn't be more of a Baltimore Ravens if he had a big, massive Ravens tattoo across his chest.
No, this is, as I say, this is ultimate. This fits in with their model, the type of player they've always had. Fortunately, though, in my draft, Jordan Davis is already off the board. However, on the same line, in the same team, is Devontae Wyatt, and I have the Ravens taking him as a nice consolation prize for not landing Davis.
Which is cool because he's probably just as talented. And there you go. Neil, I'm going to step aside here. Philadelphia Eagles needs defensive end, safety, wide receiver, defensive back and linebacker. Who have you got the Philadelphia Eagles taking?
With the first of their 2 picks, obviously the other one is quickly approaching, I have them taking cornerback here, and I have them going with Trent McDuffie. Obviously they'd love, Ahmad Sauce Gardner to fall this late. I can't see them seriously entertaining Tyler Linderbaum here, especially if Jason Kelsey is coming back. I think that Darius Slay played at an excellent All-Pro level last year. What was happening from the other side of the field was serviceable, but I think the Eagles, as we know, have not had two great or even 2 very good corners for a long time. So I think they'll take the opportunity to use the first of their picks here on Trent McDuffie. Maybe they could do it something else, and then later on in the draft get his teammate Kyler Gordon. But I think rather than gamble on that, go with McDuffie here.
Weirdly, I also picked Trent McDuffie, which makes me sad because I assumed you'd pick wide receiver. But anyway, could take Devontae Wyatt, who Neil mentioned before, defensive tackle from Georgia, but I'm with Neil, and I am going to take Trent McDuffie. Final pick in this show's mock draft 1 to 16 is the New Orleans Saints. Needs quarterback, offensive tackle and wide receiver. I have them taking Kenny Pickett here, quarterback, Pittsburgh. Double gloves, small hands, all the stuff before you starter. And probably the highest floor quarterback in this year's draft. So I've got them taking that. Could take a wide receiver here, but we'll come on to that in another show. I've got them taking Kenny Pickett, quarterback from Pittsburgh.
Interesting. As I say, I don't see them getting involved in the quarterback sweepstakes because I think they're deluded. So I have them taking a tackle because they did lose one Obviously, Teron Armstead, if he stays healthy, was one of the best players at his position. If he stayed healthy, doesn't matter. He's not their problem now. He's now in Miami. So I've got them going with Charles Cross from Mississippi State. So there's your left tackle. Plug in, and if you can keep Jameis Winston, who is working on his intermediate accuracy, which is a good thing that you'd hope a first overall pick would be working on 8 years into his career.
That dude won a national title. Anyway. Neil, that's it for this edition of the mock draft. We will start recording later on, 17 to 32. Enjoyable, good 1 to 16, and a lot of consensus, which is annoying. Anyway, where can people catch you before we're back?
Can't catch me anywhere. I haven't done a damn thing all week. So just follow me on Twitter at @Nutton13.
I am at Maindy7 combined. We are at waxing_lyrical. This is part 1 of the Waxing Lyrical mock draft, and we will be back very soon with part 2. Until then, these top guys are out.